Hey guys, tonight we travel back many years to the sides of the Nile River. We go to a land known for pyramids, pharaohs, and gods that watched you all the time. But behind the gold masks and big temples was a very hard life. Today we are asking what would happen if you lived just one day in Old Egypt. Because let me tell you, the sun is not the only thing that will cook you until you are gone. So, before you feel settled, take a second to like the video and subscribe. But only if you truly like what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you are watching from and what time it is for you. It is always interesting to see who is with us from around the world. Now, make the lights low. Maybe turn on a fan for that quiet background sound. And let us slowly begin tonight's trip together. Welcome to Old Egypt, a land of pyramids, gods, and constant pain from the sun. Before your eyes even open, the sun is already shining hard through your reed hut. It is like the sun is trying out for the part of a mean sky god. There are no curtains, no blinds, and definitely no cool air machine. Just the raw, mean heat of the desert, cooking everything, including you, by breakfast time. You are lying on a straw mat with a linen sheet that is more of an idea than a cover. The Nile wind you heard about in all those travel shows. Yes, it is gone. It probably disappeared around 2800 BC. By the time you walk outside, the air is already close to 90 degrees Fahrenheit or around 32 Celsius. And it is not even the middle of the morning. The sun does not just shine in Old Egypt. It attacks. Your linen shirt is useless. It is like wearing thin paper in a steam room. And do not even think about sun lotion. There is no aloe vera plant, no SPF 50, not even a floppy hat with a picture from a beach hotel. Old Egyptians did have special oils, but you are not getting any of that unless you are rich or work in a temple. Your best option, cover yourself with mud or crocodile poop, which people said might keep you from turning into a human fire. The important word is might. By the middle of the day, the stones under your feet are hot enough to cook beans. Shade is a special treat. Trees are hard to find. You might get a little relief hiding behind a mud brick wall, but even that wall is sweating by now. You, on the other hand, look like a person threw you into a clay oven and forgot to set a clock. And you better not complain. Ra, the sun god, is watching. And in Old Egypt, the sun was not just weather. It was holy power. The hotter the day, the more powerful Ra was feeling. So basically, if you are melting, it is a spiritual good word. In short, living one day in Old Egypt needs a lot of water, being humble, and a very strong power to feel like a cooked chicken. And this is just the morning. You are finally out of bed, or maybe off your scratchy straw mat. And the good news is the Nile is just a little walk away. The bad news, you can already smell it before you see it. Yes, the great Nile, the giver of life for Old Egypt, respected as holy, the reason people could even live here. But let us be truthful, it also smells like a fish store had a bad fight with a wet land. The sides of the river are full of flies, frogs, and things that probably should not have legs, but they do. Still, this is where you wash. Soap was not created yet, and even if it was, you did not have money for it. Instead, you clean yourself with the newest washing tool of the time. Sand. That is right. Cleaning your skin the Egyptian way. Just rub yourself down with rough bits of sand and call it taking care of your skin. It is like nature's rough paper, but it works less well. Washing clothes also happened in the Nile. And by washing, we mean hitting them against rocks while you hope that a crocodile does not think your clothes are a nice snack in the middle of the day. Oh, and just to make things more fun, let us not forget the dirty water that sometimes flows down from up the river. Remember, people, farm animals, and the occasional boat for a dead person all use this river. And yet, somehow, this is seen as clean. You scrub, you wash, and you come out feeling a little less sticky and only a bit more worried about bloodsuckers. If you live in a city like Memphis or Thebes, you might be lucky enough to use a public pool or tank, but for every other person, it is the Nile or nothing. And do not think you will have private time. This is a public washing space used by families, neighbors, farm animals, and a strange ibis bird pecking around your feet like it is paying for a place to live. Water pots are filled and held on heads, carried back to your mud brick house before the middle of the day. Heat turns the clay into baked bread. It is a daily habit, holy, important, and a little bit scary. So, yes, the Nile is holy. It gives you food, it cleans you, and it stops your thirst. But let us not act like it is a shiny, clean water place. In truth, it is part amazing, part a health danger, and all you have. By now, you have washed in the crocodile-filled Nile. You have used sand to make yourself almost clean, and your body feels like a cooked fruit. Time for breakfast, the most important and least fancy meal of your old Egyptian day. Let us be clear about what to expect. There are no special eggs, no bowls of fruit, and definitely no cold coffee drinks. Breakfast in Old Egypt is less of a food party and more of a quick fuel stop. You sit on a low stool if you have one, or just bend down in the corner like every other person. The main part of your meal, bread, a lot of it. Thick, rough, and often as hard to chew as a leather shoe. It is made from emma wheat or barley and cooked in clay ovens that may or may not be used by the local rats. And do not be shocked if there is sand in your piece of bread. Not as a topping, just an extra part from the grinding stones. A daily bit of minerals, you could say. Then comes the beer. But do not get excited. This is not a fresh, fizzy craft beer. This is thick, not clear, warm, liquid bread. More like a thick soup than a drink. It is full of energy and a little bit fermented. A smoothie from old times with the light taste of sour grain and the need to live. Even children drink it. Not to be cool, but because it is safer than water. At least the making of beer boils away the tiny bad things. Unlike the Nile, which we just talked about, is basically a dish for germs. If you are lucky, and we mean very lucky, you might get an onion or a few dry dates to go with your bread and foam mix. Protein is only there if a person caught a fish and did not immediately eat it uncooked. And as you chew your rock-hard bread and drink your grainy sludge, flies buzz around you like it is a big meal, because it is. For them. You hit at them with one hand, hold your cup with the other, and try not to think too hard about the fact that this is probably the best meal you will have today. Breakfast in Old Egypt is not about taste, it is about purpose. It gives your body just enough fuel to live until the next time a person hands you another sandy brick of bread. Enjoy your meal. You have had your sandy bread, your thick beer, and just enough rest to say you are working. Now it is time to work. And believe me, old Egyptian work makes today's tired feeling look like a relaxing day. Unless you are a writer, a priest, or a king, which, let us be honest, you are not. Your job is all muscle and dust. No cool office room, no coffee times, no special chairs, just sweat, sand, and a constant chance of falling down before noon. If you are a farmer, you will be deep in Nile mud by the time the sun rises, pulling out bad plants or planting barley under the watch of a boss whose fun activity seems to be yelling. You use wooden plows, simple sickles, and your empty hands. If your back hurts, good job. That means it is working. If you are a worker, things get even more like an old story. Picture carrying stones that weigh many tons for building a temple under a hot sun with no shoes. You go up ramps made of small rocks and hope. There is no safety net here. You fall. That is a broken ankle and a shrug from the boss. Working on tombs. That is another hard level of work. You're hitting limestone, cutting out rooms for dead people who will get to rest longer than you ever will. And if you make a mistake on a pharaoh's tomb, let us just say your job safety might mean a closed room and a curse. And if you are a woman, you are not free from work. Housework is also hard, physical work. Grinding grain, carrying water, making linen cloth, taking care of kids, and still helping in the fields. Your rest is when the baby sleeps for 7 minutes. While you make dinner, you eat while moving. You wipe sweat with your shirt. You keep moving because stopping means you fall behind, and falling behind means another person gets your share of grain, and you get the blame. There is no stopping work. The sun is your boss. When it finally goes down behind the land, you crawl home almost dead, covered in dust, and dreaming of softer shoes and a less mean sun god. Work in old Egypt is not just hard, it is never-ending. It is a full-body promise to live day after day until your body stops or your boss decides you're not worth giving food to. And that is not even the worst part of it. After sweating out your spirit in the fields or stone pit, you might want to grumble. Maybe a small complaint, a little, "This job is bad," or "Why am I doing this again?" Stop right there. Because in old Egypt, complaining is not just disliked. It is possibly a crime against the ruler. Why? Because your boss is not just a ruler. He is a real god. The pharaoh is not some man who was chosen or born into a rich family. He is the human form of Horus, son of Ra, picked by the gods to rule over Egypt and keep Mahat, the holy order of the universe, safe. In other words, if the river floods well this year, thank the pharaoh. If it does not, well, maybe you did not pray hard enough. To doubt his power is not just mean, it is a holy offense. Talking bad about him could get you a meeting with a whip, a set of chains, or an early trip to the land of the dead with none of your favorite things to be buried with. You see his face everywhere, on statues, temple walls, coins, even bread shapes. His name is said in holy acts. His picture is painted bigger than every other person's in every wall painting. That is not a choice of art. That is the law. And do not expect to ever see him. If you are a common person, the closest you will get is watching a golden boat float by during a religious party. Blink, and he is gone. Back to a palace you will never go into, with officials, guards, writers, and enough gold to pay for a small land of people. Which fun fact he basically does. If you are lucky enough to work on a royal project, say a tomb, a temple, or a statue the size of a mountain, you serve with holy happiness. At least that is what the state says. You say it too because pretending you are happy to carve stone for 14 hours a day is safer than the other choice. And do not even think about fighting back. Pharaohs stop rebellions faster than you can say dynasty. Just ask the last village that tried not to pay taxes. Oh wait, you cannot? It does not exist anymore. So yes, the pharaoh is a god. And you? You are just lucky to be allowed to sweat for him. Now, get back to work. If you thought living under the sun was hard, just wait until you understand that in old Egypt, sand is your housemate, your co-worker, your food spice, and your deadly foe. It is everywhere, in your clothes, in your bed, in your food. There is no way to get away from it. You could be working, praying, sleeping, or doing your own thing in the market. And then a gust of hot wind blows by and turns your face into a grainy skin-cleaning test you did not want. Let us start with the clothes. You wear linen. It is light, it lets air through, and it is about as good at keeping sand out as a screen door is at holding back soup. It slides down your shirt, sticks to your skin, and somehow gets into places you did not know had folds. Eating? Good luck. Every piece of bread is basically a sand holder. Since flour was ground between stone plates, little bits of grit got into the dough. Egyptians did not just eat their wheat, they ate their grinding stones too. It is why old teeth are often worn flat, like river rocks. Picture chewing your breakfast while also grinding down your teeth every day. And if you thought your house was a sand-free place, think again. Your mud brick home has holes, cracks, and windows with no glass. Perfect doorways for wind-blown sand. Your floors are covered. Your cooking pots are full. Your bed is basically a sandbox that looks like a piece of furniture. Shoes are not always worn. Most Egyptians walked with bare feet, meaning you are always one step away from turning your feet into old leather shoes. If you do have shoes, it is usually a simple pair of sandals made from reeds. Maybe they look nice. Do they protect? Not at all. Then there are sandstorms, Egypt's way of getting a slap from the gods. Fast, spinning, making you blind. One moment you're talking to a friend, the next you are spitting dust and feeling like a person dumped a whole beach into your eye holes. You cannot see anything, and every person around you turns into a shape that is coughing. In short, sand is the housemate who never goes away, the spice in every meal, and the quiet foe of your eyes, lungs, and pride. It is not just the background of your life, it is part of your body now. And no, you cannot wash it off. You already tried in the Nile, which is probably full of more sand. In Old Egypt, religion is not just a weekend thing. It is the main program for everything. Your job, your food, your washing habits, your bedtime rules, all are decided by gods who seem to have very clear ideas. First, understand this. The gods are everywhere. Your town has temples to a dozen different gods, each one in charge of some important job. There is Ra, who drives the sun across the sky like it is a holy car service. Thoth, the god with an ibis head, is in charge of writers and moon calendars. Sobek, part crocodile, part bad dream, guards the Nile. And Bastet, the cat goddess, basically handles public image. Forget personal choice. Your daily life is about making them happy. Wake up, thank Ra, spill some beer, say sorry to Hathor, hit your toe, say a bad word quietly, or you might get the attention of a spirit with a problem. Before meals, you give a bit of food to the gods. Before bed, you pray that Set, the god of trouble, does not throw your house into a big mess overnight. Even funerals are events that last many days where the dead person must pass tests, stay away from demons, and show they were a good person or face being wiped away forever. Talking about the next life, old Egyptians took it very seriously. You do not just die and go on. You must go through a judging process where your heart is weighed against a feather of truth. If your heart is heavier because of lies, meanness, or maybe taking another person's donkey, you're eaten by a mit, a creature with the head of a crocodile, the body of a lion, and the legs of your worst bad dream. So yes, even when you are dead, you are still being tested. But here is the interesting part. This complex set of beliefs is not sad. It is comforting. Egyptians believed life was part of a universal balance, and if you followed the rules and kept Mahat, the idea of truth and order, you had a chance at a peaceful forever life, with food, family, and maybe a boat. Of course, the richer you were, the more God seemed to pay attention to you. Temples were huge, priests were powerful, and poor people. Well, they just hoped the gods were feeling kind that day. Because in old Egypt, faith is not a choice. It is your job paper, your safety plan, and your travel plan for the next life. So you have stepped on a sharp object, got bit by a strange creature, or caught a sickness that spreads, which in old Egypt is basically a Tuesday. Time to get medical help. Just do not expect a room to wait in or a clean place. You are about to be healed with a mix of magic words, plants, and pure hope. First, you will be taken to a doctor. And to be fair, they were some of the most skilled in the old world. They had tools for operations, medical books, and a good knowledge of the body. But here is the problem. Science in old Egypt always came with a lot of magic. You're given a paste made of honey, moldy bread, and crushed plants. Honey is actually good against germs, and mold has early forms of penicillin, so it works a little. But before putting it on, the healer will say a magic word for protection just to be safe, because you never know when your stomach pains are really because of a mean ghost or an angry god. Have a headache? You might get a mix of crushed onions rubbed on your head while a person says a song to Thoth. Have a cough? Let us rub cow poop mixed with dates on your chest and see what happens. Eye sickness? Time for a paste of lizard blood, red dirt, and beer. Plus a prayer to Horus. Operations. They did happen sometimes. Pus-filled spots were drained, bones were fixed, and cuts were sewn with linen string. But there is no medicine to make you sleep. Just a sharp knife and a friend to hold your shoulders down while you scream into a pillow made of mud bricks. Teeth care, not great. Remember all that sand in the bread? Your teeth are worn down by your 20s. If one gets sick, your choices are 1, live with it. 2, die from it. Or 3, have it pulled with a tool that looks like pliers made by a metal worker with low-quality rules. And let us not forget the magic charms. Whether you are giving birth, getting sewn up, or just sneezing too loud, a good doctor or priest will probably hang a charm around your neck. Just in case the real problem is a snake spirit you cannot see curled around your spleen. So, yes, Egyptian medicine had its good times, but mostly you would better believe in the gods because your bandage is truly a prayer. Here is a surprising fact most people do not know. Old Egyptian women had more rights than many women in later times. They could own land, run businesses, ask for a divorce, and even take a man to a court. Sounds modern, right? But before you pack your bags for a time-traveling trip to be a powerful woman, wait. Because while the law might seem good, the daily life was not so nice. If you are a woman in old Egypt, you probably wake up before the sun. You are grinding grain by hand, using a giant flat stone that wears down both wheat and your back. Then it is time to carry water from the Nile, cook breakfast, take care of children, run the house, feed animals, and if needed, help in the fields. You are a workforce of 1 woman in linen. There is no time for yourself, no relaxing days, and definitely no time off for having a baby. Giving birth is dangerous and painful. Helpers are useful, sure, but there are no shots to stop the pain, no germ killers, and no music lists with relaxing harps. You give birth in a hot room with smelly smoke, prayers, and hopefully not too much blood loss. Let us talk about clothes. Linen dresses are light and let air through, but there is no undercloth and no shoes. The sun burns your skin, the sand grinds into everything, and the bugs think you are a meal they can eat all of. Want makeup? Great. Egyptian women did wear face paint, but it is made with lead and put on with sticks that look a lot like toothpicks. Now, if you are lucky enough to be born into a rich family, things are better. You might read, write, manage family money, or become a priestess. If you are born into royalty, you could even become pharaoh like Hatshepsut or Cleopatra, who ruled with smarts and scary eye makeup. But if you are poor, your rights may be in the law, but your life is hard work. You work, sweat, bend, carry, give birth, bury, and pray. You are not tied by law, but by the need to live. Still, Egyptian women had power, and that was important. They could speak in court, keep their family money, and did not become property when they married. Compared to many old societies, that is a big deal. So, yes, Egyptian women had rights, but comfort, that is for statues and goddesses. Not the woman with her arms deep in dough while hitting flies off a small child. You made it through another hard day in old Egypt. You ate your sandy bread, carried your buckets, avoided anger from the gods, and maybe even escaped a sandstorm. Time to relax, right? Wrong. Because in old Egypt, your real test starts after you die. Death is not the end. It is just the start of a very complex, long journey through the world of the dead. And if you thought the work boss was strict, wait until you meet the gods who judge you. First, your spirit takes a trip to the hall of Mahat. Here, in front of a court of 42 gods, you must say you are not guilty in what is basically the oldest legal talk in history. You say things like, "I did not steal, I did not lie, I did not want my neighbor's donkey," all while hoping the gods believe it. Then comes the heart test. Really, your heart, believed to be where the spirit lives, is put on a scale across from the feather of Mahat, the sign of truth, justice, and balance. If your heart is heavier than the feather, well, that means you have lived a bad life. Here comes Amit, part lion, part crocodile, part hippo. All scary. She does not arrest you. She does not fine you. She eats your spirit, destroying it forever. No next life, no second chances, just being gone forever, which in a culture that cared so much about forever is the biggest punishment. And it gets better. You can ruin yourself not just by what you do, but by what you say. One wrong thing said, one forgotten line during your judgment, and boom, your spirit is gone. It is like an open book test where failing means being eaten by a monster from stories. If you do pass, congratulations. You get to enter the field of reeds, a peaceful, perfect version of Egypt where your spirit lives forever with boats, with crops, with family, and probably with fewer sandbugs. But the risks are huge. That is why Egyptians cared so much about preparing tombs, funeral rules, and magic books like the Book of the Dead, a holy guide full of prayers, magic words, and helpful advice like, "Do not insult the crocodile god." So yes, the next life might be beautiful, but only if you live your life very well. One bad word, one unpaid temple tax, and your next stop is lunch for Amit. Sleep well. If there is one small good thing in old Egypt, it is this linen. Wonderful, airy linen. Your whole set of clothes and every other person's is made from this plant cloth. It is light, cool, and lets your skin breathe in the hot heat. That is the good news. The bad news, that is pretty much where the comfort stops. Whether you are a farmer, builder, priest, or seller, you are wearing the same clothes every day. For men, a short white skirt or cloth. For women, a straight linen dress with no sleeves, sometimes held up by straps, sometimes not. If you are from a high class, you might have folds or beads or nice designs. If you are not, it is plain white or a little gray, depending on how long it has been since you washed your clothes. Oh, and washing day. You are hand-washing your clothes in the Nile while hoping a hippo does not come up in the middle of a wash. Most people have bare feet. Sandals made from woven reeds or leather are for special times or temple priests. So, unless you are royalty, expect to spend your days with hot sand between your toes and possibly a sharp rock in your heel. Extra items, of course, but mostly for a reason. Charms for protection, necklaces to show your place, and eye makeup made from powdered kohl, which was not just for looks. It helped lessen the bright light from the sun and was said to keep away sickness. Yes, even eyeliner had a job in old Egypt. But no matter how well you dress, the bugs do not care. Flies, small bugs, mosquitoes. They see your airy clothes as an open door. You are walking through the day hitting them all the time, rubbing on scented oils, and praying that your linen does not stick to you like a wet curtain the moment the sun is at its strongest. And of course, your clothes do not change with the parts of the year, because Egypt does not really have different parts of the year, just hot and a little less hot. So, your linen outfit is basically your uniform for the whole year, whether it is 110 degrees or a cool 70-degree evening. So, yes, Egyptian clothing was light, nice, and much more comfortable than what Romans would wear later. But do not let the airy outfits trick you, because no matter how light your shirt feels, your life is still heavy with work, heat, sand, and bugs that do not respect your personal area. You have lived through another very hot Egyptian day, carrying bricks, avoiding sandstorms, and praying your linen does not fall apart in the middle of a task. But in old Egypt, living is always for a short time, because no matter how strong you are, you probably will not live past 35. Let us explain it. If you live past being a child, which is already a big success because the number of babies dying was very high, you're thrown right into being an adult by age 13. Getting married, working, and having children all start early, because honestly, you're running out of time. You might die from too much heat, or a sick cut, or having a baby, or crocodiles, or scorpion stings, or bad bread. And forget about medicine for sickness. If you get a high temperature, the best help is honey, plants, and hoping the gods do not have other plans for your spirit. But here is the interesting part. Egyptians were not afraid of death. They planned for it. In fact, they planned for it better than most people plan for getting old today. If you are rich, you order a tomb, the old version of a 5-star forever room. You start saving up things for your grave, jewelry, food gifts, perfumes, statues, even tiny servant dolls called shabtis to do your work in the next life. Think of them as spirit helpers who work while you sleep forever. Your body is preserved, wrapped in linen, filled with natron, a natural salt, and put neatly into a painted box. You are buried with a copy of the Book of the Dead, which is less about bad things and more like a magical travel book, with passwords for the next life, magic words to confuse demons, and rules for not getting eaten by monsters that eat spirits. If you are poor, well, your tomb is probably a small hole in the sand. Your body is wrapped in whatever cloth your family has. Maybe a pot or two placed close by and then covered with dirt. No wall paintings, no golden mask, just you and the wind. But even the poorest Egyptians held on to the dream of the next life, a peaceful, rich paradise called the Field of Reeds, where you farm without sweat, eat without hunger, and sail the Nile forever under soft sunlight. So yes, you will probably die young in old Egypt. But if you lived well, prayed right, and did not insult too many gods with jackal heads, you just might spend forever in a nice way. You finally made it to the next life, or at least into the tomb. You have been preserved, wrapped, blessed, and buried. Time to rest in peace, right? Well, not quite, because in old Egypt, even the dead get robbed. Let us start with a simple fact. Tombs are full of valuable things. Gold charms, jewelry, scented oils, carved statues, boxes full of linens, and for pharaohs, truly boats full of treasure. All of it was meant to be taken into the next life. But treasure in a tomb is basically an open welcome for a person with a tool and bad ideas. Stealing from tombs was so normal that it became a constant problem. Pharaohs tried to stop it by hiding their tombs deep in cliffs, locking them behind trapdoors, and writing scary curses on the walls. Things like, "May a crocodile eat your spirit," or "May your arms and legs be twisted forever by a snake made of fire." Guess what? The curses did not work. Grave robbers came anyway at night, in secret with secret information. Sometimes they were local people. Sometimes they were bad workers who helped build the tombs. In some cases, even priests and guards were part of it. And the punishment for getting caught was bad. Think public beatings, cutting off parts of the body, being sent away, or death. But thinking about how valuable tomb goods were, especially gold and rare incense, the risk often seemed worth it. After all, the dead do not fight back. But it is not just the rich who got robbed. Even the graves of common people were messed with. Poorer Egyptians might have been buried with a small pot of beer or a piece of bread for the next life. That was still worth stealing. Food was not plenty. Tools were valuable, and linen was like money. The strange thing is this: stealing from tombs was not just about being greedy. Sometimes it was about living. Egypt had times of no food, political problems, and attacks. A hungry worker might break into a tomb not for treasure, but for food. And when your children are starving, a few funeral gifts look less like holy objects and more like dinner. So in old Egypt, you are not safe just because you are dead. Your tomb can be robbed, your name wiped away, and your preserved body unwrapped by a desperate person with a pickaxe and a bad sense of right and wrong. Rest in peace, only if no one knows where you are buried. We have all seen them, those grand, strange carvings on the walls of temples and tombs. Birds, eyes, snakes, lotus flowers, men walking sideways like they are on a fashion show stage. Old Egyptian hieroglyphs, beautiful to look at and extremely hard to learn. Sure, they look cool, but try to read them. Hieroglyphs were not just nice art. They were a full writing system with over 700 signs, and more were added. Some signs mean whole words. Others are sounds, and many are signs that explain the meaning. Because writing the word star with a real star sign might be too simple. And do not expect spaces or punctuation marks. Old Egyptian writing was basically one long, beautiful puzzle with an artistic touch, no vowels, and a big need for the situation. Oh, and it can be written left to right to left, or top to bottom, depending on what the writer wanted to do that day. The secret: look at which way the birds or people are looking. That is the way you read. If they are looking right, read right. Looking left, read left. And if they are upside down, good luck. Learning to write hieroglyphs was not for common people. Being able to read was not common. Maybe 1% of the people could actually read and write. If you wanted to join, you had to become a scribe, which meant years of hard learning, starting as a child. You would learn hundreds of signs, copy many scrolls, and practice so much that your hand probably turned into a claw by age 15. But the reward was big. Scribes were respected, had enough food, and never had to carry bricks under the sun. Instead, they wrote tax papers, court papers, letters, and holy books. They were very important to the society and were kept safe from most physical work. In a world where writing was power, scribes ruled quietly from the hidden places. For the rest of the people, though, writing was a magical thing. Truly, hieroglyphs were believed to have holy power. Writing a person's name kept their spirit safe. Wiping it away meant complete spirit destruction. So, yes, spelling really was important. So, while hieroglyphs may look like old picture messages, they are more like a language puzzle, wrapped in stories, numbers, and secrets. Beautiful? Yes. Easy to learn? Definitely not. After 14 parts of heat, hunger, sand, strange beliefs, and very hard work, it is time to ask the big question. Would you live through a single day in old Egypt? Let us be honest. Probably not. Sure, it is easy to think of the old world in a dreamy way. Golden tombs, air that smells like lotus flowers, graceful hieroglyphs, gods with animal heads, and a love for order and beauty. But behind the famous big buildings and amazing art was a world of hard truths that affected every person but the very rich. Your normal Egyptian day started with a dirt floor, a cloud of flies, and the fact that if you did not work, you did not eat. You walked with bare feet on hot sand, carried water, cooked over open fires, lived very close to bugs, smoke, and farm animals. You worried about sickness, punishment from the gods, and whether a snake might crawl onto your sleeping mat. You had no tooth-cleaning paste, no medicine, no plan for when you get old. And if you were lucky, maybe 2 sets of linen clothes. You served a god-king who could take your land with an order, a weather that cooked your skin by noon, and a religion that made you pass a real holy test after death just to get into the good version of the next life. Let us also not forget the things you did not have. No medicine for germs, no sun lotion, no private time, no pipes for water, no pills for pain, and no easy way to leave. Once you were born into your group, that was it. No getting a better job, no changing your work, no finding your true self. You were either a writer, a farmer, a worker, a mother, a servant, or dead. And yet, for all this, the old Egyptians were not sad. They believed very strongly in their gods, their reason for being, and the beauty of life. They loved music, dance, food, family, and parties. They told jokes. They painted. They pictured a forever life with enough clearness to build stone buildings that still stand today. But for a modern person, without your cool air machine, your clean water, your pain pills, your sport shoes, and your phone, you would give up before the second sandstorm came. So, no, you would not last a day in old Egypt. But that is okay because they lasted thousands of years. And maybe, just maybe, that is why we still talk about them. In the center of old Teotihuacan, one pyramid will not be forgotten. Its surface is covered not with peaceful signs of faith or kind gods, but with angry, open-mouthed stone snakes, dozens of them. They stick out from the temple's front as if they were stopped in the middle of a strike, with teeth showing and eyes wide. This is the temple of the feathered serpent, known to many as the Temple of Quetzalcoatl. But unlike most temples that reach for the sky with respect, this one feels different. It feels like a hunter. From the moment you get close to it, there is a strange feeling that you are being watched. The stone snake heads are not just for looks. They were warnings, signs of a god's anger. And under their look, a terrible thing once happened. Digging over the last few decades has shown something that diggers did not expect. Hidden under the temple's bottom were not just holy gifts, but something much more scary. Human bodies, and not a small number. Over 200 bodies, many of them with no head, hands tied behind their backs. Young men, maybe fighters, buried in groups, sacrifices put in order with perfect numbers. Some were buried with sharp black stone knives at their sides, others with necklaces made of human teeth or jewelry made from jawbones. They were not just thrown into the ground, they were put in places with special meaning. It is clear this was not a big grave. It was a message, a holy deal carved into stone and sealed with blood. But what kind of belief accepts such a terrible thing? Who wanted so many lives to be taken at once? The temple of the feathered serpent was not just a holy building. It was a show of power, a place where rulers mixed star study, fighting, and fear to keep control over a city of more than 100,000 spirits. And this holy bloodletting may have been the price of keeping the universe in balance. As you stand before this temple today, looking at those stone snakes, you are not just looking at art or buildings. You are looking into the eyes of a people that believed the gods needed blood, and that they had every right to give it. But who were these people? Who ordered such violence and disappeared without a sign? The answer is in the shadows of Teotihuacan. Before the strong Aztec Empire, before the Maya carved their universe calendar into stone, there was a city like no other in the old Americas, Teotihuacan. Its name, given by the later Aztecs, means the place where gods were born. And when you walk its huge avenue of the dead, with pyramids on both sides that touch the sky, you start to understand why. At its best time, around 100 to 250 C, Teotihuacan was a huge city of over 100,000 people, making it one of the biggest cities in the world at the time, as big as old Rome, Alexandria, and Chang'an in size and power. It was a city planned with great care, wide roads, straight streets, groups of apartments for big families, buildings with many floors made from volcano stone. And at the center of it all, 3 huge pyramids. The Pyramid of the Moon, the Pyramid of the Sun, and the Temple of the Feathered Serpent. But here is what makes Teotihuacan different. No one knows who built it. Seriously, to this day, we do not know the name of the people who built this place. We do not even know what they called themselves. There are no written papers, no kings' names carved into stone. Teotihuacan seems to have been a society ruled not by one king but maybe by a group, a rule by priests or something completely new to our idea of old power. And even with this unknown name, their power was huge. Proof of Teotihuacan's power has been found hundreds of miles away, from the Maya cities of Tikal and Copan to the far Zapotec main city of Monte Alban. Sharp black stone blades, styles of pots, wall paintings, and even getting involved in politics. In one case, people from Teotihuacan may have helped remove a local Maya king to put in a ruler who was better for them. But how did they keep such a big network? How did a city with no known writing system have such power across Mesoamerica? The answer may be in how they mixed ideas about the universe with running the state. Their temples were more than places to pray. They were tools of control, lining up perfectly with star events, used as stages for holy sacrifice and reminding every person and every visitor that Teotihuacan was no normal city. It was the center of the world, a holy machine that kept time, fate, and blood moving together. And at the heart of it all stood the temple of the feathered serpent. To understand the temple, you must first understand the god it was for, the feathered serpent. Known later by the Aztecs as Quetzalcoatl and to the Maya as Kukulkan, this god is one of the most puzzling gods in all of Mesoamerican stories. But in Teotihuacan, hundreds of years before the Aztecs came to power, the feathered serpent was already a main, maybe the highest holy force. But here is the puzzle. What kind of god is both a snake and a bird? Think about that. Snakes crawl through the world of the dead. They lose their skin, which means new birth, two sides, and death. Birds fly high in the sky, closer to the sun, which means freedom, holiness, and wind that gives life. To mix these two, one on earth and one in the sky, death and life, trouble and order, was to create something completely from the universe, something very powerful. The feathered serpent was not just a god. He was a bridge between worlds. On the front of the temple, carved in deep shapes, we see dozens of his pictures, big eyes, showing teeth, feathered hats. Some historians think these are the god himself. Others think they are fighters or priests dressed in holy clothes to show their power. Either way, they are everywhere. The temple is covered in these snake-bird mixes as if the building itself breathes with a holy feeling. But the feathered serpent was not just a god of the skies. He was very connected to sacrifice. Blood was the fuel that kept the universe moving. And Quetzalcoatl, though later remembered as a kind, civilizing god, had a much darker part in Teotihuacan. He wanted gifts, and not just of corn or incense, but of life itself. In some stories, he went down into the world of the dead to get the bones of the dead and create people. But to bring life from death, there had to be a trade. The gods sacrificed themselves for people, and people in return were expected to do the same. The temple of the feathered serpent was not just a building for faith. It was a universe machine made to connect the sky, the earth, and the world of the dead through holy acts. Every stone, every snakehead, every buried dead person was part of that system. Teotihuacan did not just pray to the feathered serpent. They lived his ideas, his puzzle, his power, and his blood. And the most scary truths were hidden under the ground. For hundreds of years, the temple of the feathered serpent stood quiet, a worn, large building half-eaten by time. Local people told stories. Smart people made guesses. But no one could have dreamed what was buried under its many layers of stones until diggers broke through in the late 1980s and early 2000s. What they found was not just a surprise, it was scary. Hidden under the temple's bottom were a number of long sealed rooms and holes, each filled with carefully placed human bodies. These were not the messy signs of war or sickness. These were planned sacrifices, done in a system, holy, cold. The dead people, more than 200, were young men, many between 15 and 25. Some wore necklaces made of human jawbones. Others had their hands tied behind their backs. A few had no head. Sharp black stone knives, sharp and black as night, were spread nearby. The clear tools of holy killing. And this is where it gets darker. The placing of the bodies followed shapes and special patterns. They were not buried without a plan. They were placed in 4 sections, main directions, possibly to be like the universe. Even the number of bodies was important. It was not just about death. It was about death with meaning. Gifts were around the dead people: jaguar bones, snakes, special shells from the far Gulf Coast, small figures, and sharp black stone blades that had never been used in a fight. This was not punishment. It was a gift. These young men, most likely fighters, had been chosen not to die in shame, but to die as part of something great. To the Teotihuacanos, the act of building a temple may have needed human sacrifice. It was as if every stone had to be made holy with blood. Every layer was raised only after a gift had been made. The deeper you dig, the more sacrifice you find. In one room, diggers found complex tunnels filled with mercury and mica, things connected to the world of the dead. The floor shined like water. Was this a special path to the land of the dead? A copy of the night sky? The more they dug, the more it felt like the temple was not built on top of death, but made to hold it. The blood did not stain the stone by mistake. The stone was meant to hold the blood, and all of it was for the gods. Look closer at the temple of the feathered serpent, and you will see a strange thing, a scary thing. It does not just sit on the land. It lines up with the universe. Teotihuacan was not built without a plan. The whole city was set out along exact universe lines. Its main avenue of the dead runs at a 15-degree angle away from true north. Not a mistake, but a planned change, possibly to line up with the setting of the Pleiades star group or the sun on special holy dates. The temple of the feathered serpent sits right along this road, locking it into a big sky plan. But why? What were they trying to line up with? Diggers and star watchers have argued about this for many years. Some think the temple lines up with the sunrise at the equinox. Others say it connects to Venus, the planet most holy to Mesoamerican peoples, often linked with war, sacrifice, and new birth. When Venus rose or set, wars were started, gifts were made, and temples were turned on with holy fire. Even the temple sizes seem planned. The use of the number 7, the number of planets you can see, shows up in its step levels. There is order, rhythm, and a great understanding of both earth math and universe cycles. And under the ground, more clues. In 2003, diggers found a tunnel under the temple. Not a simple path, but a planned underground world. The walls were once covered in powdered pyrite, a shiny mineral that would have shined light like starlight. Mixed with mercury pools and mica-lined walls, the tunnel seemed made to copy the universe itself. To walk through it would be like traveling through the Milky Way, a special journey to the world of the dead, or maybe to new birth. Was this temple not just a place of sacrifice, but a universe machine? A doorway that lined up earth, sky, and the spirit world. Some smart people believe Teotihuacan saw time as a circle, not a straight line. Every holy act, every building, every sacrifice was not a one-time thing. It was part of a forever cycle. Death leading to new life, sacrifice giving fuel to new birth. The temple's lines may have helped know when stars would move, plan when to pick crops, and more importantly, know when to offer blood. The temple of the feathered serpent was not just looking at the stars, it was trying to talk to them. The temple of the feathered serpent was not just a holy light, it was a political tool. Its very design was meant to make you feel small, to scare you, to remind every person watching, local or from far away, who had the power in Teotihuacan. Picture standing in its shadow 1,800 years ago. You, a visitor from a smaller city, would arrive at the Avenue of the Dead, already amazed by the huge size of Teotihuacan. But when you reached the Temple of the Feathered Serpent, you would stop. The snakeheads stare at you, their teeth showing. Jaguar signs growl from the stone. The open space in front once held huge crowds, not just for parties, but for public holy acts. You might even see a sacrifice. The ruling people of Teotihuacan understood a key thing. Fear is power, and nothing makes fear like a god's anger. By planning holy killings in the day, with universe signs and death pictures, they sent a clear message. The gods are with us, and we are not afraid to feed them. But this was not disorder. This was a show. Priests in feathered hats and sharp black stone masks would chant, dance, and spill blood, turning universe stories into a political show. It was not just about making the gods happy. It was about reminding every person watching that the city's rulers had a direct line to the gods. They alone could open the skies or bring rain, protect the people, or destroy their foes. Even the buildings helped to push this message. From the temple's top levels, leaders could look down on the open space. They controlled not just the story, but the real space where it happened. The people looked up at the gods, at the rulers, at the sacrifices, and knew their place. And for people from other places, Teotihuacan did not need to win with swords. It won with signs. Visiting important people would carry home stories of wonder and fear. They would talk about the feathered serpents, the endless roads, the blood rituals that lit the sky red. In a world where gods ruled through fear, Teotihuacan made itself their chosen voice, and the temple of the feathered serpent was the loudest voice of all. At its highest point, Teotihuacan was the heart of Mesoamerica, a city of fire and stone, of gods and blood, a city that seemed meant to last forever. But around the year 550 C, a change happened. A thing broke, and the quiet that came after was as cold as the temple's stone snakeheads. The fall of Teotihuacan was not loud and great. It was slow, then fast. Signs of trouble started showing up years earlier, signs that the universe machine was failing. Proof shows a long time of no rain, failed crops, and trouble among the people. The very systems that had kept this big city going, one main power, rule by religion, universe order, started to break under the stress. And then came the fire. Diggers have found wide burn marks across rich people's homes, temples, and government buildings, including signs of strong destruction at the Temple of the Feathered Serpent. What is strange is that the homes of the lower-class people were mostly not touched. This was not an attack from outside. This was a fight from inside, a rebellion, possibly from within the city. The people who once watched sacrifices with respect might have turned against their leaders. The Temple of the Feathered Serpent was a sign of godly power. It was looted. Statues were damaged. People started fires. Holy places were ruined. Then everything became quiet. Teotihuacan did not empty in one night, but its spirit was gone. Trade routes fell apart. The creation of art ended. The big ceremonies stopped. The powerful leaders vanished. The temple fell silent. Still, the puzzle grew bigger, because the city disappeared, but its story lived on. Many years later, the Aztecs came to the Valley of Mexico. They found its broken buildings. They were amazed. They thought gods had made this place. They called it Teotihuacan, the place where gods were born. They created their own stories about its pyramids. They respected it as a holy place. They did not know who first built it. For them, the Temple of the Feathered Serpent was not a broken building. It was a piece of godly truth. But the strange fact continues. The strongest city of its day was built on cosmic rules and blood. It disappeared without a written message, It left no final account. It left only stone and questions. It seemed the gods had gone silent. For more than 1,000 years, the temple of the feathered serpent was buried. It lay under layers of dust, volcanic ash, and quiet. Local people stayed away from it. Farmers worked the land around it. The world did not remember it. Then the modern time of archaeology came. It broke open the secrets hidden in its center. In the early 20th century, Mexican archaeologists started digging at Teotihuacan. What they discovered was amazing. It was a perfectly planned city, much older than the Aztecs. But only in the 1980s and 2000s did the temple start to show its deepest and most frightening truths. One of the most amazing findings happened in 2011. Researchers found a closed tunnel under the temple of the feathered serpent. It had been sealed on purpose almost 1,800 years before. It was as if to stop a person from ever going inside again. After years of digging, scientists found a cosmic hallway. It was a symbolic underworld. It was lined with pyrite to look like a starry sky. It had pools of liquid mercury and thousands of holy objects. There were jade statues, rubber balls, obsidian knives, and even carved wooden masks. It seemed more like a message than a tomb. Why did the old builders take such great effort? What were they trying to protect or hide? Some scholars think the tunnel was for special ceremonies. Others believe it represented the making of the world. It was a mythical womb where gods were born. It was where kings were made. It was where godly order was decided between people and the universe. The mercury was once seen as just poison. It may have stood for water or the liquid screen between worlds. And inside all these shining pieces was a quiet whisper. The feathered serpent was still there, not just as a story, but as a being in wall paintings, in carvings, and in the shape of the temple. The serpent had not vanished. It had curled inward deep into the city's bones. It was waiting to be found again. And with every dig, every uncovered jawbone or gold piece, we get a little closer to its message. A message carved not in words, but in stone, sacrifice, and shadow. Modern science has given us X-rays, drones, and ground-penetrating radar. But with all our tools, one fact is still true. The temple still holds secrets. Today, the temple of the feathered serpent is a memorable landmark. It is not just for a long-dead civilization. It is for a way of thinking that joined power, the universe, and death into one solid system. Visitors take pictures. Children run by the stone serpent heads. But the ground under their feet holds 1,000 untold stories and over 200 known human sacrifices. And the temple still stands. Its importance is not just in its structure, it is mental, spiritual, and cultural. The feathered serpent, this confusing god of sky and earth, kept changing. The Toltecs would accept him. Then the Aztecs would remake him as Quetzalcoatl. His story then became gentler. He was the bringer of knowledge. He was the God who cried for people. He was the one who promised to come back. This new idea of the serpent god shows how stories do not die. They change. Even in modern Mexico, signs of the feathered serpent continue in art, in wall paintings, in books, and in national identity. The temple's picture has been on coins, stamps, and even government buildings. It has become a symbol of mystery, of pre-Columbian genius, and of the wild spiritual world that once beat through Mesoamerica. But there is another effect. It is one that is harder to see and more difficult to face. The temple of the feathered serpent makes us think about the cost of belief. It poses hard questions. How far will people go to feel close to the divine? What occurs when power and religion become the same? Can beauty exist with fear? In many ways, the temple is not just a place from history. It is a mirror. It is a view of us. Our deep interest in life after death, our desire for meaning, our power to build monuments of amazing beauty and to cover them with blood. The temple shows us that greatness has dark sides. It shows that civilizations can fly to amazing heights while hiding their secrets under stones. And maybe that is why we continue to go back, not just to see it, but to learn. Because deep inside, we know the serpent is still looking. Not to attack, but to remind. To remind us of what we once were and what we still could be. Before we used words, we used rhythm. Tens of thousands of years ago, long before writing was made, even before language was born, early humans started to make a type of sound with a purpose. It was not speech. It was not a tune. It was rhythm. A hand hitting hollow bark, a stick hitting a stone, a foot hitting the ground in a pattern. In that old repetition, a magical result appeared. The first drum beat. It had no name. But it gave a feeling. It felt like a message. It felt like motion. It felt like feelings taking a shape. Anthropologists found proof of simple percussion tools from over 30,000 years ago. These were probably made of natural things. Tree trunks, empty gourds, stretched animal skins. There was no fancy detail. No part was saved. But these basic drums had real uses. They were used to give a warning, to call people, and to make a connection. Picture a group of people spread out in a thick forest. One beat from a far drum, and others knew danger was near, or a party had started, or the gods were hearing. The first drums were not just tools. They were like parts of the human body. A heartbeat made loud, a pulse that could be felt across a valley. Drumming was not an act you saw or heard. It was an act you did with others around fires, under stars, in caves, where sounds made the air shake. These old rhythms became a language of feeling. Joy, sadness, warning, hope were all shown not in sounds or pictures, but in patterned sound. Before the first flutes were made, before stringed instruments were imagined, the drum was already present. It held us in time. It gave form to ceremonies. It joined people into groups. In that way, the drum became humanity's first instrument. And maybe it was its first kind of group identity. No matter where on earth people were, they made a thing to hit, a thing to beat, a thing to mark the time. Because even when we had no words, we had rhythm. And that rhythm was the main idea. In the start of early human life, drums were not just instruments. They were holy voices. Every group, every culture, every part of the earth made its own rhythm. But the use was almost the same everywhere. It was to talk with the hidden world. In Africa, where some of the world's first drums appeared, rhythm was closely tied to life, death, and family history. The gambe was made from one tree and covered in goatskin. It was thought to hold three spirits: the spirit of the tree it was made from, the spirit of the animal whose skin gave it a voice, and the spirit of the person who made it live. Played in circles, the gem did not just go with ceremonies. It was the ceremony. Then there were the talking drums. They could copy human talking through high and low sounds. In West Africa, these drums sent messages over miles. They told news, warnings, births, and deaths from one village to another. Long before the telephone, humans were already drumming their messages across the land. Over the oceans, Native American groups saw the drum as a living thing. It was the heartbeat of Mother Earth. It was played in ceremonies to respect ancestors, call for healing, or lead the souls of the dead. The large pow-wow drum was played by a circle of drummers. It was both a musical and spiritual force, a shared pulse that connected people with nature and spirit. In Australia, the Aboriginal people used clapsticks and percussive stomps in the holy Dreamtime, a mythical time of creation. In the Arctic, Inuit shamans hit frame drums to go into deep thought. They looked for visions or talked with spirits during long, dark winters. These were not shows. These were actions for staying alive, for healing, for telling stories, and for connecting. To drum was to remember. To drum was to belong. And it was always done together. Drums brought people into holy circles. They lined up hearts and goals. There was no written music, no stage, just bodies moving, hands hitting, souls waking up, all joined by rhythm. It did not matter where on earth you were. If you heard a drum far away, you knew a holy event was happening, an event that words alone could never show. From holy circles to bloody battlefields, the drum has always spoken. Sometimes it spoke with comfort, and sometimes it spoke with a command. As human groups grew into kingdoms and empires, drums changed into tools of control, instruments of order, and weapons of fear. The first armies did not have radios or megaphones. They had drums. In ancient China, huge drums called bo were hit to guide soldiers over large areas. With one loud boom, leaders could signal an attack, a retreat, or a move to the side. These drums were not just loud, they were part of a plan. Each rhythm had a clear meaning. Trained soldiers knew how to listen, even in the middle of a fight. In Mesopotamia, temple drums were used to announce rulers and call the people. But in times of war, they sounded through city walls. They scared enemies with a deep, constant thunder. It was not just hitting things. It was a war of the mind. When the Romans marched, they carried the tympanum. It was a frame drum used in parades and by cults like the cult of Cybele. It was not a battlefield instrument like horns and flags were, but it had symbolic power. It was a sound of empire, rules, and order. But no army used drums like the Ottomans. Their mitab bands were the world's first known military orchestras. They created a huge storm of drums, cymbals, and horns before fights. The constant pounding of curse, giant kettle drums, and Davel double-headed bass drums put fear into the hearts of enemy soldiers. Some European stories tell of soldiers stopping in fear before even seeing the Ottomans. They were frozen by the sound. Drums also showed power away from the fight. In royal courts in Asia, Africa, and Europe, drum groups announced arrivals, marked coronations, and supported political ceremonies. To beat a drum was to say, "Power is here." Even enslaved people in the Americas used drums as tools to fight back. On plantations, rhythmic talking kept culture alive. It helped plan secret uprisings. The drum, even when crushed, did not stay quiet. So whether it meant divine right, military rules, or pure fear, the drum has always had a message. This is who is in charge, this is who is marching, and this is the rhythm of power. As civilizations grew across continents, their rhythms also grew. They changed in shape, use, and idea. In the East, drums became tools of exactness, spirituality, and ceremony. In the West, they moved toward military power and later, orchestral size. Two worlds, two ways, one heartbeat. In India, the drum became a holy instrument of a divine language. The table, with its clear sounds and smooth style, was used in classical music and religious shows. But it was more than a support, it was a talk. Each hit had a name, a meaning, a syllabic identity. Indian drumming was not just hitting, it was spoken poetry, learned over many years. The table player was not just a musician, he was a language expert of rhythm. In Japan, the Tao drum appeared as a ceremonial giant. It was played in Shinto ceremonies, theater, and war. Tao needed not just technical ability, but physical control. The drummers moved with warrior-like exactness. Their poses were solid, like warriors. In festivals, the booming Tao sounded through mountain valleys. It was believed to push away evil spirits and call the gods down to earth. At the same time, in Indonesia, the kendang drum led the mesmerizing flows of gamelan orchestras. It guided dancers and musicians in holy temple ceremonies. These rhythms were layered, connected, and heavenly. They were a sound picture of cosmic harmony. Across the world, in Europe, drums had a different tale. They were mostly useful during the medieval time. They signaled soldiers, marked time, and enforced rules. It was not until the Renaissance and Baroque times that drums started to be in formal music. Even then, they were kept in the back. Tony thundering under royal music or sounding in big cathedrals. In this split, you see two ideas. The East saw rhythm as art and spirit. It was tied to breath, chant, and deep thought. The West saw it as structure and power. It was a tool to gather, march, and count. But both knew the drum's main power: to shape time, to set the speed, to raise ceremony, to connect humans in ways beyond language. East or West, holy or strategic, the drum was always central. Always listening, always speaking. From mountaintop temples to jungle clearings, from desert fires to candlelit cathedrals, drums have always had a spot where humans meet the divine. Long before set religion started, rhythm was already a holy language. It was a way to pray, to call, to rise above. In Africa, drums were not just instruments, they were spiritual beings. In Yoruba customs, for example, the batar drum was used to talk with the orishas, gods, and ancestor spirits. Drummers were not entertainers, they were priests. The rhythms they played were secret prayers. They asked the gods to come down and dance with the living. Each pattern had a use. Each beat had a direction. In Hinduism, the drum is even in the hands of gods. The god Shiva, in his form as Nataraja, dances the cosmic dance of creation and destruction. He holds a small hourglass-shaped drum, the Damaru. Its beat stands for the pulse of the universe. From quiet to sound, from empty space to form, the drum is a divine heartbeat. In Buddhism, the ritual frame drum is used in monastery chants and meditation ceremonies. Its slow, soft hits guide breath and focus. It acts like a metronome for the soul. It is not loud, it is not forceful. It just tells the person to come back again and again to the now. Across the Americas, indigenous groups use drums in vision quests, sweat lodges, and healing ceremonies. The beat is constant, steady. It copies the rhythm of the womb. It helps people go into deep thought or connect with ancestor spirits. In these places, the drum does not just support prayer. It is the prayer. Even in Christianity, where rhythm was often quieted, the drum still had a holy part. In gospel customs, especially in African American churches, drums became a way of praise and power, a heartbeat behind voices raised in worship, a reminder of struggle, hope, and divine rhythm in every life. No matter the belief, the ceremony, or the God called upon, the drum has been there. not as a decoration, but as a container for energy, purpose, and the mysteries we cannot say. Because when words are not enough in worship, rhythm is still there. And the divine always listens. For thousands of years, drums were single instruments, one body, one sound, one use. But in the center of the industrial age, a big change happened. In factories, streets, and music halls, percussion was rethought. And by the early 20th century, multiple drums were not spread across a stage. They were joined together. They formed a completely new thing, the drum kit. It was created from need. In the late 1800s, military and theater bands needed several percussion players to play bass drum, snare, cymbals, and woodlocks. Each was played by a different person. But room was limited and money was tight. So drummers started to join instruments into one playable arrangement. By 1909, the first bass drum pedal was patented. A drummer could now hit a huge drum with one foot. This left their hands free to do more. The idea became popular. Over the next few decades, drummers added hi-hats, toms, cowbells, and ride cymbals. They made a setup that could copy a whole percussion group, all from one chair. What came out was more than a tool. It was a drummer's throne. And then jazz arrived. In smoky clubs and hidden dance halls of New Orleans and Chicago, the drum kit burst into life. Jazz drummers did not just keep time, they played the kit like a voice, with syncopation, swing, and feeling. Famous players like Gene Kruer and Buddy Rich made the drum set a main instrument. Rhythm became storytelling. As jazz changed into rock, the drum kit got louder, heavier, and more powerful. The 1960s and 70s saw kits get bigger with multiple toms, splash cymbals, and double bass pedals. Drummers like John Bonham, Neil Peart, and Keith Moon tested the limits of endurance and invention. The drummer was not in the back anymore. He or she was the engine. Today, the drum kit is a worldwide common item, from gospel churches to EDM stages, from punk garages to world tours. And even as digital kits and drum machines appear, the physical nature of a live drum kit, the sticks, the skins, the sweat, is still vital. It is a symbol of modern rhythm, a mix of centuries where old ways meet new ideas, and where one drummer can speak with 10 voices at once. The world beats in thousands of languages, and so do its drums. From continent to continent, culture to culture, the drum has had very many forms. Each one has a clear identity, sound, and use. These are not just instruments. They are cultural signs made from local things, formed by local hands, and filled with the rhythms of daily life. In West Africa, the J is still a heartbeat of community events. It talks in sharp slaps and deep bass sounds. It is made for storytelling and unplanned talks. Next to it, the dondon gives the main pulse, a rhythmic bass around which others can dance. In Africa, a drum group is not just music. It is a talk between spirits, ancestors, and the living. In the Middle East, the dabuka, a goblet-shaped drum made from clay or metal, makes crisp, fast rhythms needed for belly dancing and classical Arabic music. Its voice is sharp and clear. It requires exactness from its player and movement from its listeners. Across the Caribbean and Latin America, drums tell a different tale, a tale born from strength and mixing. The conga, bongo, and timbre show the mix of African, native, and Spanish roots. In Cuba, the holy ba drums are used in Santalla ceremonies. Each drum speaks a divine language connected to the orishas. In Brazil, the thunder of Cerro and Cuica leads samba parades through the streets. It puts joy into protest, prayer, and carnival. In India, the Mridangam and tabla lead South and North Indian classical music. These drums are so exact they are tuned to a pitch. This makes the line between rhythm and melody unclear. Each finger movement is important. Each hit has centuries of custom. Then there is the frame drum, one of the oldest in human history. It is in many things from Persian daft to Irish bodhran, from shamanic tools to folk groups. Played with fingertips, mallets, or brushes, it is proof that even simple forms can be holy. What joins them all? Use. Whether leading dance, healing, ceremony, or revolution, each drum shows the soul of its people. Their rhythms carry geography, history, and identity. The global drum family is not just varied, it is universal. Because no matter where you go, the earth still sounds with rhythm. As the 20th century ended, the sound of drums started to shift, not in rhythm, but in feel. The physical was replaced by the programmable. The sweaty hands, the wooden sticks, the hard fingertips, all started to share room with circuits, pads, and software. The time of digital drums was here. It started in the 1970s with basic drum machines. Early machines like the Rhythmicon and Roland Car 78 used analog circuits to copy simple beats. At first, they sounded like robots, even clumsy. But musicians saw a different view, sameness, control, and huge potential. Then a big change came. In 1980, Roland released the TR-808, a drum machine so famous its deep, loud kick and sharp snare would later define whole types of music. Hip-hop, techno, electro, and trap were all partly born from its man-made pulse. It was no longer about copying acoustic drums. It was about making new sounds completely. As digital audio advanced, so did the tools. Electronic drum kits like the Roland Fee drums let drummers play naturally while starting thousands of sampled or man-made sounds. Artists could now practice quietly, record without microphones, and change drum kits by pressing a button. And with computers came digital audio workstations, DAWs like Ableton, FL Studio, and Logic. Now, a person with a laptop could build complex rhythms. They could layer kicks, snares, hi-hats, and sub-bass into large sound structures. Finger drumming on MIDI pads became its own art form. Some were afraid this change meant the end of traditional drumming, a replacement of human feel with cold exactness. But that did not occur. Instead, a mix appeared. Acoustic drummers started adding triggers and samples to their kits. Producers started layering human-played drums with machine beats. The natural and the man-made found a rhythm together. Digital drums did not wipe out the past. They rethought it. And today, we live in a world where one person in a bedroom can build rhythms that once needed whole orchestras, where old grooves from Africa, Asia, and the Americas can be sampled, changed, and given new life on bright dance floors. The tools have changed, but the use is the same: to move bodies, to shape time, to make quiet speak. Across every time, every empire, and every change in technology, one point has never changed. The drum is our oldest and most lasting voice. From old fire circles to modern concert halls, from holy ceremonies to digital dance floors, the drum has never been just about music. It is about connection. Connection to ourselves, to each other, to a larger idea. It is the heartbeat we all have, not in a symbolic way, in a real way. Because even before we are born, safe in the womb, the first rhythm we hear is our mother's heart. Steady, safe, alive. And when life starts, we look for that rhythm always. The drum has been our friend through happiness and war, through worship and protest. It has marched next to kings and stood up with rebels. It has sounded through temples and subway tunnels. It talks in every language because it is a language that goes past thought and talks right to the body, the bones, the blood. In sad times, we drum to cry. In happy times, we drum to celebrate. And in the quiet times between, we drum to remember who we are. Today, percussion keeps changing. You can find handpan street players making new age rhythms on city corners. Native communities saving old drumming customs against all problems. Stadium drummers getting crowds to cheer together. Children hitting pots and pans with natural joy. Even artificial intelligence is learning rhythm. But no computer program can copy the human soul behind one flawed beat. Because rhythm is not just counted, it is felt. And maybe that is why the drum has lived longer than empires and styles. Because deep down we all want the stability of time, the shared pulse that tells us we are here together now. No matter how advanced our instruments get or how digital our lives become, there will always be a deep grounding in skin on skin, stick on hide, hand on wood. A beat, a breath, a start. The drum is not a thing from the past. It is a notice that we were always meant to move in rhythm, to listen, to feel, to play. And as long as humanity lives, the drum will never be quiet. Before Manhattan was a forest of glass and steel, it was an island of shadows. The shadows were not from towers. They were from church spires and slanted roofs. In the early 1800s, a skyline did not really exist. The city was on the southern point of the island. It was a crowded area of brick townhouses, wood-frame shops, and dirt roads. Buildings were seldom taller than 5 or 6 floors. Not because people lacked ambition, but because gravity made the final decision. The taller the building, the more weight it had. With stone and brick, height was very expensive. The walls needed to be thicker on the bottom to hold up the top levels. This left less space inside and needed huge foundations. To build tall was to build heavy, and heavy was not a good financial choice. So the city grew sideways. It spread north on a grid planned in 1811. It was one of the bravest city designs of its time. But under that grid, under the layers of cobblestone and dirt, Manhattan had a secret tool. Bedrock, deep, solid, and steady. The granite core under the island would one day hold some of the tallest buildings in human history. But for now, it was quiet. It was not touched. It was waiting. Life in early Manhattan was loud but low. Business was busy in the harbor. Ships filled the docks. Horses made noise on narrow streets. The economy grew, new people arrived, and the island filled with energy. But the city still stayed close to the ground. The sky was empty. The only tall buildings were churches. Trinity Church was the most famous. Its spire, finished in 1846, was over 280 feet tall. For a while, it was the tallest building in New York. But even that was more of a symbol than a skyline. What no one knew at that time was that the skyline's future would not be made of stone or wood. It would be made of iron, steel, and ideas. And it would not be held down by the ground. It would rise high above it. Manhattan was not yet a city of towers, but the preparations were being made. The island was prepared. The dream was starting, and soon the skyline would start to grow. For many centuries, gravity was the main builder in Manhattan. It made buildings short, cities flat, and human goals tied to the earth. But in the middle of the 19th century, Two big discoveries would open up the skyline. One lifted people. The other lifted buildings. The first one came in 1852. An inventor named Elisha Otis showed his new safety elevator. In a big show at the New York Crystal Palace, Otis stood on a platform high over a group of people. He told a worker to cut the rope. The people gasped, but the platform did not drop. A hidden part locked the lift. With that one amazing moment, Otis changed the rules of height. Before then, the top floors of buildings were the cheapest. No one wanted to walk upstairs. But when elevators became safe and common, those top floors became valuable spaces. They had light, air, and importance. The vertical city suddenly became a good financial choice. But being able to lift people up was not enough. Buildings still used load-bearing walls. These walls got thicker and heavier the higher they went. That is when the second innovation came: the steel skeleton. In the 1880s and 1890s, engineers started using steel frames to hold the weight of buildings. This let outside walls become thin covers instead of heavy support parts. This method was called steel frame construction. It gave architects a new liberty. They could build as high as the frame allowed. Suddenly, height was not a danger. It was a plan. The technology was ready. The materials were here. And Manhattan, with its solid bedrock and strong economy, was the best place. The island's small size made vertical ideas popular, and its role as a financial center meant that everyone, from banks to newspapers, wanted their name seen in the clouds. The elevator made the sky usable. The steel skeleton made the sky buildable. Together, they did not just change building design. They changed what a city could be. Now the competition would start, not across, but up. By the late 19th century, New York City was no longer happy to spread out. It wanted to fly. The ground was full. The streets were crowded. The only direction left to build was up. With steel frame construction and the elevator now common, Manhattan became a test area. The skyline became a battle for goals. The first moves were made in the 1890s. In 1890, the New York World Building, the home of Joseph Pulitzer's newspaper business, stood 20 stories high above Park Row. It was the tallest office building in the world for a short time. Not wanting to lose, the Park Row building took the top spot next in 1899. It stood at 391 feet. Each new tower was a statement, not just of money, but of ideas. To build higher was to say, "We are the future." Soon the skyline started to grow with steel giants. The Singer Building was finished in 1908. It stood at 612 feet. It became the tallest building in the world. It was the first building to be taller than the spire of Trinity Church. That church had held the record for over 50 years. But even that did not last. In 1913, the Woolworth Building took the top spot. It was designed by architect Cass Gilbert. It was paid for in cash by store owner Frank W. Woolworth. It went up 792 feet. It had over 55 floors in a tall show of neo-Gothic style. It was called the Cathedral of Commerce. The Woolworth was not just tall, it was beautiful. It was an architectural speech about America's rise as a modern power. But this was not just a building contest. It was a fight over brands. Corporations and groups competed for the tallest, most special buildings. They wanted towers that would put their names in the sky. Every new height was a news story. Every shape was a symbol. The skyscraper became the best advertisement. It was permanent, large, and hard to miss. And under it all, the rhythm of progress beat without stopping. Steam shovels dug foundations into granite. Riveters hammered steel day and night. Immigrants and ironworkers stood on beams hundreds of feet in the air with no safety lines. They had only courage and determination. The skyline was no longer an idea. It was real, and it was rising. As the 1920s moved through Manhattan, the skyline started to dance, not just to rise. This was the time of Art Deco, a time when building design was not just about height, but also about style. The Jazz Age put grace into steel and stone, and New York's buildings became symbols of motion, light, and energy. The most amazing of them all was the Chrysler Building. It was finished in 1930. It stood 1,046 feet tall. It was briefly the tallest building in the world. It was ordered by carmaker Walter Chrysler. The tower was not just a monument to business success. It was a beautiful work of design. Its stainless steel spire was built in secret. It was lifted into place in one night. It shined in the sun like a crown. Decorative eagles, shaped like car hood decorations, stuck out from the corners like guardians of the future. With its curves, chevrons, and machine-age details, the Chrysler Building did not just touch the sky. It charmed it. But the contest was not finished. Just a few blocks away, another giant was rising. The Empire State Building was finished in 1931. It was built during the hard times of the Great Depression. It soared to 1,250 feet. It took the title from Chrysler. It held it for almost 40 years. It was built in just 410 days. Thousands of workers worked through wind, snow, and steel dust. The Empire State was not just a building. It was a statement. New York continues. While much of the country had problems, Manhattan pushed upward. Its buildings showed the two sides of the time, elegant but forceful, hopeful yet competitive. The Art Deco style showed the opposite ideas of the time. It was geometric but graceful. It was modern but full of myth. Towers were not just useful. They were shaped. They glowed at night like signs of possibility. And yet under all that shine, there was a reason. These skyscrapers were built by rich men and tycoons who wanted more than money. They wanted a legacy, a lasting place in the skyline and in history. By the end of the 1930s, Manhattan's shape had formed. The city was no longer just a center of money. It was a cathedral of ambition, a skyline that did not whisper progress. It shouted it. After World War II, Manhattan's skyline went into a new stage. It was one with less decoration and more business. The grace of Art Deco was replaced by glass, steel, and straight lines. America was now a world superpower, and New York was the main office of that empire. The skyline changed to match, not with fancy spires, but with monuments of effectiveness. In 1952, the United Nations headquarters was built on the East River. It was a bold, square glass tower with low marble wings on the sides. It showed a change in feeling. It was global, diplomatic, and futuristic. It was not just a building. It was an architectural statement about international order in the atomic age. And it showed what would come next. Then came the Lever House in 1952 and the Seeger Building in 1958. Both were key examples of the international style. These towers had curtain walls of shiny glass and steel frames. They were simple by design. They had no decoration. They had no feeling. They did not look like cathedrals or castles. They looked like machines. Exact, modern, and very practical. The Seagram Building was designed by Ludwig Mies van der Rohe. It was very influential. Its bronze-colored glass, regular grid, and open plaza showed a new kind of city presence. It was not meant to impress with decorations. It was meant to show order, rules, and power. This was corporate building design at its best. Cold, beautiful, and powerful. As businesses grew, so did the skyline. Midtown became the center for America's big corporations, banks, media companies, and law firms. These new skyscrapers did not compete for beauty. They competed for square feet, for location, and for a place on the horizon. The tall spires and gargoyles were gone. In their place were mirrored giants, faceless giants that showed not just the clouds, but the goals of Wall Street. And yet, in their quiet and simple form, these towers said a lot. They told the story of a country focused on growth, exactness, and modern life. They defined the corporate time. They shaped the look and feel of cities around the world. But even with all this glass and steel, one thing was still true. The skyline was still a symbol, only now it whispered power instead of shouting beauty. By the late 1960s, New York was already a vertical work of art, but it still had space to dream bigger. That dream took form at the southern point of Manhattan. There, a pair of matching towers would soon change the skyline forever. They were bold, debated, and different from any building the world had ever seen. They were the twin towers of the World Trade Center. The World Trade Center project was planned as a center for world business. It was managed by the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. Architect Minoru Yamasaki designed the buildings with a very simple style. Vertical lines, aluminum covering, no steps back. Each tower would be over 1,360 feet tall. They would be much taller than any building before them. The goal was not just about building, it was about ideas. A statement of world connection. A new temple for capitalism. Building started in 1966. To create space, a whole area, Radio Row, was torn down. The foundations needed a new method called the slurry wall. It let engineers build deep into the soft river bottom while keeping the Hudson River back. It was one of the hardest engineering tasks of its time. When they were finished in 1973, the Twin Towers were not liked by everyone. Some critics said they were plain or boxy. Others were sad about the loss of the fancy towers of the past. But to many people, the towers were pure presence, bold, sure, and in command. They did not dance with the sky like the Chrysler. They did not get smaller like the Empire State. They stood strong, two pillars of certainty and size. More than just buildings, the World Trade Center became a world symbol of business, of togetherness, of American power. People came from all over the world to see the observation decks, to eat at windows on the world, or just to look up in wonder from the plaza below. For almost 30 years, the Twin Towers ruled Lower Manhattan. They were the anchor of the skyline. They gave it balance and importance. And while other cities built taller buildings, none had the symbolic importance of those two towers standing next to each other. The skyline had changed again. This time, not with decoration or art, but with huge ambition. On the morning of September 11, 2001, the Manhattan skyline changed for good. Not by cranes or building, but by force and smoke. In less than 2 hours, the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center fell into dust, fire, and bent steel. Thousands of lives were lost, and the two pillars that had once defined Lower Manhattan were gone. The attack was not just an attack on people or buildings. It was an attack on symbols, on what those towers represented. Business, modern life, liberty, ambition. For decades, the Twin Towers had defined the southern part of the island. Their clean, massive forms had become a quick visual for New York. Now that skyline was broken. In the days and weeks after, Lower Manhattan became a wound, open, burning, and raw. Where there had once been height and light, there was only emptiness. And that emptiness echoed. Pictures of the skyline looked empty. The known shape was broken, and the space that had once pulsed with world energy became known as Ground Zero. For the first time in 100 years, Manhattan was not building up. It was grieving. The city was sad, but it also survived. Steel workers, firefighters, police officers, and helpers came to the site. Not to build, but to recover. Broken pieces were moved. Lives were honored. Quiet took the place of the sound of iron. In a city always moving forward, this was a required stop, a long breath held in shared pain. But even in sadness, New York did what it had always done. It looked up. Talks about rebuilding were difficult, emotional, and political. What should go in the place of the towers? Should a building rise again? Could the skyline be fixed without forgetting the loss? For years, the hole in the ground was still there, a reminder of what was and what was gone. It became a holy place. And yet, slowly, plans came out. Designs were made. Cranes came back. Steel came back. Not to forget the sad event, but to make a new thing next to it. But before a building was built, one truth was clear. The skyline was no longer just a symbol of power or ambition. It had become a memorial, a shape formed by both success and sadness. And the story was not finished. After the destruction, a city known for speed, ambition, and movement stopped. Not to give up, but to rethink. Rebuilding the Manhattan skyline after 9/11 was not just about building. It was about identity. What would stand in place of the Twin Towers? Could a new building stand there? The answers came slowly. In 2003, a design by architect Daniel Libeskind was chosen for the new World Trade Center site. It was not just about height. It was about healing, memory, and new life. The plan would mix business space with public memorials, parks, transport, and light. It was not a return to what existed. It was a statement of what could exist. At the center of it all was a new tower, One World Trade Center. It was first called the Freedom Tower. Rising from the northwest corner of Ground Zero, it would become the tallest building in the Western Hemisphere at 1,776 feet. A number picked to match the year of America's independence. But this was not just about national pride. It was about resistance, about reaching up again even after loss. Building started in 2006, and in 2014, One World Trade Center opened. Covered in shining glass and standing like a crystal pillar, it did not try to copy the past. It offered a new thing, reflection, both real and symbolic. The building changes with the sky. It glows, darkens, and disappears based on the light. It is present without being proud. Next to it, the 9/11 Memorial opened in 2011. Two deep empty spaces where the original towers once were. Each has a constant waterfall. The names of the dead are carved into bronze. It is not just part of the skyline, it is part of the city's soul. The new skyline took years to form. Other towers were built, 3 WTC, 4 WTC, and 7 WTC. Each one was smooth, modern, and had a purpose. Together, they stand for not just a city rebuilt, but a city changed. New York did not just replace what was gone. It grew. It honored the past while building for the future. And in doing that, it reminded the world of a deeply American and deeply human idea. You can knock a city down, but you cannot stop it from rising. Today, the Manhattan skyline is more than a group of buildings. It is a living symbol of ambition, of strength, of the American dream. No other shape in the world has so much importance. It is carved into pop culture, history, and memory. You can draw it with 5 lines and people will know it right away. It tells a story of brave engineers and fearless ironworkers, of architects who dreamed of spires that touched clouds, and of immigrants who crossed oceans to help build them. It talks of risk, reward, and change, the constant activity of New York. It has never been complete, and it never will be. The skyline is alive. It is always changing. In recent years, it has grown even taller, but not in Lower Manhattan. This time, the vertical contest moved to a different part of town. Along Billionaire's Row, very thin residential towers like 432 Park Avenue, Central Park Tower, and 111 West 57th Street now stand like needles above Midtown. These skyscrapers are marvels of engineering. They are pencil-thin, tested for wind, and made for the very rich. Critics call them sky-piercing signs of unfairness. Others see them as wonders of modern ambition. At the same time, in Hudson Yards, a completely new area has appeared. It has shining glass towers, public art, and company offices where rail yards once were. The skyline now goes farther west. It changes with the city's new needs and goals. But even as it grows, the skyline holds its past close. The Empire State Building still shines at night. The Chrysler still shines at sunrise. And One World Trade Center stands serious and proud. The skyline remembers what came before, even as it reaches for what is next. More than any monument or statue, it is the skyline that defines New York. Not just in its form, but in its meaning. It is a place where humanity dared to build upward again and again through good times, bad times, wars, and hurts. A city of millions seen in steel and glass. It does not just show where the city stops. It shows where dreams start. Because in Manhattan, the sky has never been the end. It is just the next floor.